Violence and counter-violence erupt in the streets of Los Angeles, America's second-largest city. The nation is shaken, and the world watches as the U.S. teeters on the edge of crisis. Is this upheaval or the brink of a civil war? Protests broke out last week after ICE immigration raids in Los Angeles led to the arrest and removal of dozens of people labeled undocumented immigrants. President Trump has responded forcefully. Overriding California's governor, he has deployed thousands of National Guard troops to LA alongside 700 U.S. Marines, part of the nation's regular armed forces. Shocked state officials and citizens accuse Trump of abusing power, calling his actions dictatorial. On To The Point, we ask, protests in Los Angeles, is it Trump against the law? Welcome to this week's To The Point. I'm Javier Arguedas. It's good to have you with us. Let's meet today's guests. Josef Bramel is a U.S. expert and European director of the Trilateral Commission, a think tank for dialogue between America, Europe, and Asia. Andreas Rinke is the chief correspondent for Reuters' German service here in Berlin. Rachel Tausendfreund is a senior research fellow specialized in transatlantic relations at the German Council on Foreign Relations. And Marina Henke is a professor of international relations at the Hertie School here in Berlin and the director of Hertie's Center for International Security. She's joining us from Madrid. To all of you, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. And I'd like to start with you, Rachel. Donald Trump is deploying the National Guard for the first time without a governor's request since 1965. Was that really necessary? No, it wasn't necessary at all. The protests are creating some chaos. There has been some violence and some fires and, really powerful pictures. We've seen them of the, guy in a mask on top of a car. But these protests are significantly smaller than the Black Lives Matter protests or other protests that we've had recently. The LAPD is a very large, very well-supplied police force, so it's completely unnecessary, but it's a show that Donald Trump wants. It's also a conflict that Donald Trump wants. The more we're talking about chaos in LA and Trump being the law and order president, these are good headlines for Trump. Good headlines that also go in line with the rhetoric. Marina, I'd like to toss over to you in Madrid. Trump says that Los Angeles is being invaded by a foreign enemy. How do you explain that rhetoric then?
Well, it's the card he wants to play. Trump's agenda economically is failing, right? He isn't bringing economic prosperity back to poor Americans. His international agenda is also failing. He hasn't produced peace in Ukraine or in the Middle East. To the contrary, the conflicts are actually inflaming. And so the one area where he thinks he's actually strong is this area of immigration. And so it is really, like an attempt to kind of focus the attention of the American public and, of course, also of the international public on this problem of immigration, where he wants to portray himself as the one person who really can solve this issue that, yes, a lot of Americans still consider a major issue for their country. To what extent, Josef, I would ask you, because it is true that immigration is, it is an important, significant issue for American voters. Do you have the feeling that the majority of Americans think there is something wrong in immigration policy that needs to be fixed?
Yeah, I agree. The timing is perfect for him to distract from other problems, but it has been planned a long time ago. He has been talking about some form of invasion, to quote him literally, at his inaugural speech, so don't be surprised. And he has been elected for that. I've been at the party convention, and there were two dominant issues. One was the economy, inflation, and the other one was immigration. So don't be surprised if he now wears a strong suit, because on the other hand, you have a governor who has not so good cards, as he would put it, and he really used it masterfully, and the governor needs to be careful not to be trumped.
We're talking about Gavin Newsom. We'll have a look into his role in just a minute. Andreas, first, we are looking at this from Germany and Europe. How do you think these protests and the instability that they reflect are perceived here in Europe?
I think it's seen as another sign of insecurity in the States, that Trump, with his style of politics, trying to provoke, is creating chaos on a smaller base. At the moment, it's in California, and we haven't seen unrests on a large scale in other parts of the country. But I think it's adding to the insecurity which his political style already created among Europeans and also among European investors.
We haven't seen unrest so far in other cities, but we have seen protests. They have now erupted in New York and other cities across the U.S. Reports indicate that dozens of demonstrators have been arrested. As tensions continue to rise, the unrest threatens to spread nationwide, even raising the question, is America on the brink of civil war?
Burning cars and violence on the streets of Los Angeles have led to the deployment of security forces. For the first time in 60 years, a US president has called in a state's National Guard against the will of the governor of California. President Trump is once again breaking taboos.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden.
For years, Trump has said that he would use the military against demonstrators. Now he is fulfilling his election promise. He aims to arrest and deport approximately 3,000 undocumented immigrants daily, claiming that 21 million people have flooded the country.
I was elected to get rid of those criminals, to get them out of our country.
Instead of backing down, the demonstrators continue to take to the streets. This is happening not only in Los Angeles, but also in other cities such as New York. We ask, is Donald Trump once again testing the limits of his power?
It seems like he is. Josef, these protests, of course, have enormous political implications, especially when it comes to how much power Donald Trump really has. How far do you think he can go against state and local authorities?
Well, there used to be checks and balances. I still remember them. I used to work for one branch of government, for Congress, but forget about Congress. Republicans, they really are not in any check on him. But the law could finally be called into it with the Supreme Court, and he needs to be careful if he doesn't go further than just getting the National Guard in it. I think he's on safe ground, since he has put 3 on the highest bench on the Supreme Court, that giving more leeway as a president. But if he invokes the Insurrection Act or gets the military, the Marines in it, I guess that would be even a step too far for even his nominees he put on the bench.
We're trying to figure out what the intentions are here. There seems to be the stated intention, which is to get rid of illegal immigration, as he says. Rachel, some argue that this could also be a strategy in order to get rid of Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who is right now, I would say, the main political voice against him. Do you think that assessment makes sense?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things going on there. He is testing the bounds. So he is sending in the National Guard and the troops in an illegal way. He's doing all kinds of illegal things since his first day in office in order to kind of test the boundaries, test the courts, create more uncertainty. And he is definitely eager to have this fight with Gavin Newsom. He thinks that making Gavin Newsom position himself as the defender of these, undocumented immigrants and of the defender of the people burning cars is a bad look for the Democrats. And he's right about that. And so this is just a political game for him, but it is also an illegal action. So more so than the protests, it's the problem that you have a president who doesn't respect the law.
And he has had some conflicts with the law already. Andreas, do you think that the checks and balances, as we just mentioned, could actually work? They have before, but Donald Trump is not necessarily following the orders of the courts.
Well, maybe it's a bit too early to say that what's actually happening, because there are a lot of lawsuits against him, and we'll see which one he's respecting and which one he isn't. But of course, as mentioned by Josef as well, that check and balances are threatened. And I think, again, this creates this insecurity not only for Americans, but also for the rest of the world, because we don't know in which way he will act also against foreign companies, for example, foreign citizens. We have seen that with the visa for students. And so it's adding to this insecurity.
It's adding to insecurity, but it also is trying to create a perception of security. Marina, it is true that Americans overall, at least in the elections, had a sense that immigration was not really in control. Other governments have failed. Don't you think this is part of what the American public wanted? Law and order, no matter at what cost?
To a certain degree, yes, and to a certain degree, no. I think there is a limit. So the narrative so far was that it is about these illegal immigrants, but who also have committed crimes. And now what we see ICE is doing, they even go to courthouses and pick up these immigrants who are actually like in a legal pursuit to regularize their stay in the United States. They go into schools, they go into hospitals, they go into workplaces and take out folks who have sometimes been there for decades, who have families, who have children, which are then legal US citizens, right? And so I think it is a fine line, and I think we need to kind of wait still a little bit how public opinion shifts. In the big picture of things, it is a topic that goes well with the American public. There is a sense that too many immigrants have come into the country. But on the other hand, I think when Americans wake up to the reality of all these undocumented immigrants actually leaving the country, then they will see when it comes to, basic services. This is about gardening, about cleaning services, about sometimes transport services, about construction, about agriculture. In all these fields, actually, these undocumented workers play important roles. And so prices will rise, and there might actually be a shift in public opinion.
We are seeing efforts to limit the protests, Rachel, but they haven't really worked because we see more protests coming up. But the essential question here is who is going to those protests? Is it only migrants and people will, let's say, affiliated or related to them, or also the general American public?
I mean, you see a lot of different left-wing or Democratic-aligned groups going to the protests. I mean, the pictures you see are always small groupings who get, more violent or wearing masks are a little bit more flamboyant. But in a lot of these protests, you have also huge groups of, teachers, unions, hospital workers, all kinds of people. And that's, it's not in the pictures, but that's the reality of the protests in most places, is that the vast majority are political, peaceful protesters, but you always have some people looking for trouble, eager for trouble, and you don't even know where they're politically aligned, right? Sometimes it's just chaos agents who will use the opportunity for looting or having a little bit more fun than the law allows.
You wanted to add?
Maybe if I add something, I think what helps him in other parts of the States, the Midwest or on the East Coast, is that the demonstrators in California wave, not all, but there have been seen some Mexican flags. I think that's something which is understandable in California. Maybe people in Texas might understand the historic link, but I think it's rather seen as a threat from the Americans from the East Coast, and I think that helps Trump in a way because it's a sort of discreditation for the protesters.
It fuels this rhetoric of an invasion of foreign people coming into the country. The question, Josef, is whether this equation, if you will, we have an invasion, I'm the president, I'm going hardline on them, is going to ultimately work and give Donald Trump more power in the end.
I agree. It would be wrong to rally around the Mexican flag. So Democrats have to really be careful because Trump will do the rally around the flag, the nationalistic tone. And let's not forget, Republicans have been afraid they may be minority pretty soon. When you look at the numbers, especially Latinos and birth and rebirth, we are talking about a country that may be an apartheid state. I mean, that's quite a fetch. Think about it. I mean, what would the Republicans do if all of a sudden the so-called minorities would rule? And they're not ready, and that explains Trump. That explains Trump's first electoral victory and now his second. So nobody would speak up about that because it would be considered racist and this and that. But deep down, people are afraid, and that's why Kamala Harris, with some other background, had a problem. And there is an issue. There has been a white dominant elite that has been calling the shots that is now afraid of losing power positions and also those who are afraid they would lose their work, the MAGA-base, they're now happy because if Latinos are gone, yes, I agree with you, this will be people missing left and right, but actually that's good for unions too because then they have more bargaining power. And here, be careful, these are new issues. Let's not forget Trump is a working class leader and Democrats have managed by their ignorance to be the party of the rich.
Yes, but the question here is when we talk about fears, we're also talking about fears of losing democratic principles and the democratic system. Marina, do you think this also plays into this equation? Because there is talk about how far this can go. There is even talk about a possible civil war. Do you see that scenario in that kind of confrontation?
Look, I think it's a mixed picture. There's a famous case of the man from Maryland, Kilma Abrego Garcia. He was deported to El Salvador. You had Trump and Secretary of Homeland Security Noem saying like he will never come back, and he came back. So to a certain degree, that is a victory for the courts, right? That it is a victory for the rule of law. So that's why I think you have two sides fighting. You have extremists in the Trump administration, I think, having complete disregard for the rule of law and economic norms. But there are other elements, even inside of the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress and Senate, who I still think cling to the value of democracy and also legal principles. So it's a fight. And for now, I don't feel confident to make a prediction who will win that fight. I very much hope that the democracy and rule of law will win, but I think we need to wait how this plays out and be a little bit patient.
Well, patience is certainly running out for many of Trump's allies who have actually wrote with him. Either you are with Trump or you are against him. It appears so these days. Donald Trump's first presidency was marked by political upheaval from the start, and his second term seems no different. Now, one of the most high-profile and heated conflicts is unfolding: the world's richest man, Elon Musk, versus the most powerful, Donald Trump.
After providing huge support to Trump's campaign, Elon Musk was granted access to the White House, opening up doors for his company Tesla. But Musk has become increasingly critical of what he perceives as the president's misguided economic and financial policies, leading to a big rift.
Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore.
Following the riots in LA, California Governor Gavin Newsom is increasingly the subject of Trump's fury. This is partly because he represents a beacon of hope for the Democrats and advocates for a progressive environmental policy.
He's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states.
But not even foreign guests of state such as South African President Ramaphosa or Ukrainian President Zelensky are safe from Trump's fury.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Things went better during the recent visits by French President Macron and German Chancellor Merz when Trump showed his charming side.
I'm not friends with anybody. I'm friends with you.
But no one knows how long Trump's goodwill will last. Is Trump's unpredictable behavior increasingly isolating him in both domestic and foreign policy?
Rachel, as we see that support for Donald Trump becomes more crucial than ever, what do you make of the likes of Elon Musk breaking with him in this very particular moment?
It's not that surprising, really. I mean, it was clear that these two men who are very, very confident and not necessarily known for being, good friends to anybody. We heard Trump say himself he doesn't have any friends. So, I'm not that surprised that they finally had a fight. I think there is genuine disagreement about some of Trump's economic and fiscal policies. That's a real point of disagreement. We've also seen, Elon Musk, he lost a lot, actually. I think he thought this was going to be great for him. It was going to, increase his profile. He liked the sort of international role that he got to play, but we saw, he's less rich than he used to be. And finally, the costs got too high. And for Trump also, it's easy to kind of push Elon aside and blame Elon for some of the trouble. So, it was a fight that you could have seen coming.
One of the most important aspects of this fight is that massive spending bill that Donald Trump is trying to push through. Musk spoke up against it. Josef, do you think this could play into Trump's political power in the end?
It does, but only on a second track. I mean, on first glance, it looks like somebody who wants to to save money, isn't happy with a bill that adds another gazillion, Trump would say, in his language. There's a public debt, and markets are nervous. Tonight, there will be a new auction, and people are not happy to really invest in American debt any longer. So he has a point. But if he were genuine, he would also say, well, all those tax breaks that helped me and other rich billionaires, that actually add to the debt, so he wasn't genuine about that. But that was just the public fallout. I think there is a bigger, as you rightly ask, a bigger theme, the MAGA-base, the hardcore base, the working class. Steve Bannon says you need to take care of the working class and get rid of the plutocrats. And now he ditched the plutocrat, and now the MAGA base is happy again. So he's now going back, and you see it also on the immigration issue. Trump and Musk were on the same page with H-1B visas for people you need in the United States. And Trump actually took some criticism from the MAGA base, but now he's throwing out people left and right, and not only Latinos and so-called illegals, but also people from Harvard and others and high brains. So this is something Musk and all the others won't like, because they know their future, their imagination depends on it, especially when you want to team up against China. So in the end, I think Trump may come to senses, but right now he's back on the MAGA base. He's feeding raw meat to the base.
But he's also giving tax cuts to billionaires. So how does that play into that?
Well, that's America. I mean, they can square the circle. As Europeans, we have difficulty to understand that.
All right. However, the question, of course, Andreas, is whether this is going to play out well with the majority of Americans. We know that Donald Trump's polls are not the best right now. Most polls suggesting less than 50% support. Is that, let's say, erratic policy we're seeing in trade, for example, making the lives more difficult for the average American in moments where public unrest is sparking because of other reasons?
Well, it could, yeah, depending on how he plays the cards now. I think that we are at the start of a fight between business community and Trump. I mean, they have aligned some parts for the election because they thought Trump is the new man. They have, especially in the Silicon Valley, they like his disruptive thinking because their industry is disruptive as well. But now they understand that there's a high cost. We have talked about Elon Musk, that he already lost some money, and I think other tech companies might lose some money as well. And in the second phase, workers, that's the MAGA bases, might find out that the investment isn't pouring into the States because of the Trump policy. And that will mean more inflation because of the tariffs, but less investment by foreign companies.
Let's briefly look at it from the outside. Marina, we are seeing instability in the United States on many fronts. What do you think that means for America's international relations right now?
Trump is weak. And he's weak on on all sorts of fronts. One can say we in Europe have finally woken up and we are now rearming, Germany, of course, in particular. But when we look at the Ukraine-Russia conflict, Trump promised to have peace in 24 hours. Nothing of that sort has happened. Russia is not moving. When we look at the Middle East, Israel is pounding on Gaza as they did before. And of course, there might be actually an attack on Iran. So overall, the US hegemony really needs to be put in question because a lot of countries are not following US orders. And I think this is also quite important why he probably also wants to focus again attention domestically where to a certain degree has a stronger hand.
Yes,
I disagree in parts because I think that actually Trump foreign policy is one field where he could have some success. One is the NATO summit because he can claim that finally the Europeans have waken up, as Marina just said, and he claims it for himself, the 5% spending on military or infrastructure used by military. So that's his success, and in parts he's right, because he really pressed the Europeans to do that, so to speed up. And on Ukraine as well, you can look on it from two sides. One is that he hasn't convinced Putin to give up. Okay, The second is that he has convinced the Europeans to take a bigger responsibility. And I think that's something which his MAGA constituency likes to hear as well. We are less in the war. The Europeans should do more.
Taking all that into consideration, we have time for one closing question. I will start with you. It's a yes/no question only. Marina, will the LA protests ultimately strengthen Trump's grip on power?
I think we need to watch Saturday. There were a lot of protests announced, and I'm very curious of how many people will show up.
Okay.
If a lot of people show up and actually are on the streets, I think it is not a sign of strength of the Trump administration,
Okay.
but if only very few people
I have to
show
interrupt.
up,
I have
it
to
will not
interrupt now
happen.
because we want to hear the other ones. Just a yes/no. Josef.
Yes,
Yes.
the law and order suit is strong suit.
Rachel.
No.
No.
Yes, I would say.
All right, diverse opinions on this table. We'll certainly follow it for you. Thank you very much for watching this week's To The Point. Thank you to all of our guests today, and I'll see you next time. Remember, you can also watch our videos on YouTube. Just search for DW News and To The Point. Till next time, take care.